Merry Christmas. The good news of Christmas is actually written on the walls of our church. Behold, the dwelling of God is with men. In the person of Jesus Christ, God visited his people. He is Emmanuel, which means God with us. In these past months of COVID, perhaps all of us have felt at times cut off from friends and family, isolated, quarantined, but we live in the truth. We're never truly alone. God is with us. Why did God come to us as a little baby? I think it's because God doesn't want us to be afraid of himself. Jesus is beckoning us. Don't be afraid. Come to me, you who are weary and burdened, and let me refresh you. Perhaps all of us are a little weary right now, and the Lord is inviting us to open our arms, to open our hearts to him. He invites each one of us, come follow me. What does it really mean to follow Jesus, to be a disciple of the Lord? Well, to follow Jesus means to conform ourselves to him, to imitate Jesus. And we can actually learn a lot about following Jesus from his infancy. There's three virtues I want to point out that the baby Jesus shows us. The first is humility. One of my favorite stories of humility comes from Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. He was one of the most sought-after speakers in the 20th century, and Dr. Schieber invited him to the Crystal Cathedral and got up to introduce Dr. Peale, and he began, I want to introduce to you the most dynamic person you'll ever meet in your life. He's exciting and positive. He can reach down inside of you more deeply than anyone else you've ever known. He will give you self-confidence and courage. Well, Dr. Peale was thinking, wow, I've never been introduced like this. And then Dr. Schieber continued, the person, of course, that I'm speaking about is Jesus Christ. And here to introduce to you to Jesus Christ is Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. In our pride, we want the glory. We want to be honored. We want the esteem of others. What does the baby Jesus show us? God, who's all-powerful, emptied himself to become small for us. Jesus was born into obscurity, unnoticed. To follow Jesus means to live in the truth of our littleness. You know, in our pride, we want to talk and be heard. But the baby Jesus, who is the divine word, became unable to speak. A disciple of Jesus sees how important it is to listen. In our pride, we want to be accepted and welcomed and received with joy. But in the first moments of the baby Jesus' life, we see that he was rejected. There was no room for him in the inn. In our pride, we want to just rely on ourselves. I got this. I can do it myself. Isn't it amazing that God, who is all-powerful, who can do anything, empties himself to become totally dependent? He placed his life in the hands of Mary and Joseph. You see, being a disciple of Jesus means this willingness to accept the help of others. Jesus, I need you. I can't do it alone. I need your church. I need other people in my life. Now, the second virtue we learn from the baby Jesus, poverty. A priest friend of mine told me the story of visiting this elderly man who was on his deathbed. He was dying, and the man was very successful in life, and he had always sought to provide his wife and children with gifts and a nice life. He paid his children's way through college, gave them each a new car, bought nice things for his family. And he told this priest, he said, you know, it's been a blessing here on my deathbed that my family's been able to come and visit me. But you know what? Not one of my children has ever mentioned anything I gave them. What they all talked about were the memories of the time we spent together as a family. He said, Father, the only regret I have in life is I wish I would have worked less and spent more time making memories with my family. You see, sometimes the cross, suffering, or even death brings things into focus. We realize what really matters. We're not made for things. We're made for relationships. The baby Jesus wasn't born in a palace. He wasn't born into luxury. He was born in an out-of-way place, in a stable. we see that being a disciple of Jesus means to be detached from the world, not looking for our fulfillment in things, but seeing that relationships are what's most important. And finally, the last virtue we learn from the baby Jesus is love. Love is all about self-gift, this willingness to give ourselves for the good of others. And our ultimate good, of course, is our salvation. And this is precisely why Jesus came. He came to give his life for the salvation of the world. My favorite line in the whole Christmas story is when the angels greet the shepherds and say, "A Savior has been born for you. A Savior has been born for me. A Savior has been born for you." Jesus came to rescue us from our sin, to pull us out of our sin, and to save us from eternal death. And he was willing to give up everything for our salvation. He laid down his life on the cross for us. Jesus is the one person who was born with the sole mission of dying, to give his life as a ransom for many. You know, perhaps some of the greatest words of love Jesus spoke were, "Take this, this is my body given up for you." We hear those words at the Last Supper when Jesus gives his life to us in the Holy Eucharist, his body and blood. And we hear those words lived out on the cross when Jesus gave his life, his body, for the salvation of the world. Now we see this love in the baby Jesus. It's no accident that he was born in Bethlehem. The word means house of bread. From the very beginning of Jesus' life, we see that he's come to give himself away, to become our food, to allow himself to be consumed. He was laid in a manger, a feeding trough. All of this is foreshadowing the Eucharist, that he's come to give himself away as our food, to allow himself to be consumed. And so to be a disciple of Jesus means this willingness to lose our life for others. We are to live out as Christians what we celebrate every time we gather around the altar. When we gather for the Mass, we celebrate that Jesus loved us so much he broke his body and shed his blood for us. And we go forth from the Mass to say, "Take me, this is my body, my blood given up and poured out for you." Jesus is inviting us, "Come follow me." To follow Jesus means to embrace humility. Not to look to exalt ourselves, but to become small for the sake of others. It means embracing poverty, not to look for my satisfaction in the things of the world, but to remember we're made for relationships. And to follow Jesus means to follow his way of love, to be a gift to others. And it is in giving of ourselves that we will receive. Merry Christmas to all of you.